The Alteration Code, by Irwin Montrose. Chapter 1. The Journey Begins. The Eurostar sliced through the English countryside, a silver bullet carrying the hopes and secrets of its passengers beneath a dreary afternoon sky. In seat 14A, Olivia Carter stared out the window, her reflection a ghost against the rain-streaked glass. She had once been the star investigative journalist at the Herald, her name synonymous with exposés that toppled politicians and unearthed corruption. Now, she was nothing more than a discarded relic in the age of AI-generated news. Her final headline had not been one she wrote, but one written about her. AI replaces last of the old guard, Carter's final byline. Her destination was Paris, though she wasn't sure why anymore. A meeting with a former colleague, one who still had a pulse on real journalism, had seemed like a flicker of hope when she booked the ticket. Now, it felt like one last grasp at relevance before fading into obscurity. The train rocked gently as it approached the Channel Tunnel. Olivia glanced at her watch. 15 minutes until the dark stretch under the sea. It was the perfect time to retrieve her satellite phone from her suitcase in the luggage car. A vestige of her past life, the device allowed her to operate outside of traceable networks, away from the watchful eye of corporate algorithms and data miners. She rose, brushing past a cluster of businessmen, murmuring in French, and made her way toward the back of the train. Chapter 2. A Dark Discovery. The luggage car was dimly lit, the hum of the train echoing against stacked suitcases and travel trunks. The moment Olivia entered, she felt it, a chill beyond the air conditioning, a stillness that didn't belong. Then she saw him. The body lay crumpled between two large cases, half hidden in the shadows. A man, middle-aged, dressed in black with a silver cross glinting at his throat. His face was frozen in an expression of horror, but it was his mouth that sent a wave of nausea through Olivia. Pages. Pages from a Bible had been stuffed into his mouth and nostrils, suffocating him. The brittle paper protruded grotesquely, ink smudged from moisture, twisted and torn as if forced in a final, violent act of silencing. Olivia's instincts kicked in. She crouched, pressing her fingers to his neck. No pulse. His skin was cool but not cold. He had died recently. Murdered. Then a sound, a creak of the door, footsteps. Someone was coming. She had two options, hide or confront them. But before she could decide, a figure emerged from the shadows. Chapter 3. The Suspects.
What the hell are you doing here?
I could ask you the same. Is he?
Very.
Look, I just came to get my laptop. I was here maybe 2 minutes ago, and he wasn't like this.
Olivia's reporter instincts flared. He had been here just moments before she found the body. The timing was almost too convenient. Before she could press further, another voice rang out behind them.
What's going on here?
Olivia turned. A man in his 40s, dressed in the elaborate black and crimson vestments of a high-ranking member of the church. His sharp gaze landed on the body, and his face twisted in something that looked more like calculation than horror. Bishop Michael Laurent, a powerful figure in the Paris diocese, rumoured to be privy to the Vatican's deepest secrets. If anyone would want a priest silenced, it was a man like him. Olivia suddenly felt as though she had stepped into a crime novel she hadn't written, and she wasn't sure how it would end. Chapter 4. The clock is ticking. The train lurched as it entered the Channel Tunnel, the soft overhead lights flickering for a moment. Olivia's pulse quickened. She had seen enough crime scenes to know that every second counted. If the killer was still on board, they had a limited time before reaching Gare du Nord, where the body might disappear into bureaucracy and silence.
Spare me the piety, Bishop. A good man or one with a secret someone wanted buried?
Olivia's eyes darted between them. Tension crackled in the confined space. Ignoring their exchange, she knelt beside the body again, taking in the details she had missed earlier. The silver cross around his neck had been twisted violently. His hands, rough and calloused, bore ink stains, as if he had written something recently. Then she saw it. A torn scrap of paper barely visible beneath his robe. Carefully, she pulled it free and unfolded it. 3 words, hastily scrawled in trembling handwriting. The pages remain. Olivia frowned. What did that mean? She looked up. Elms and Laurent were watching her closely. One of them knew more than they were saying, and she intended to find out before it was too late. Chapter 5. A Silent Witness. The tunnel's darkness pressed against the train, a moving void swallowing the world outside. Olivia could feel the urgency tightening around her like a noose. The killer was on this train, and they were running out of time. She folded the scrap of paper carefully and slipped it into her coat pocket. The pages remain. It had to mean something. A reference to the Bible? Or was it a warning?
We need to inform the authorities as soon as we reach Paris.
And let this get buried in bureaucracy? I've seen enough cover-ups to know how this will end. The moment that train stops, we'll be told to look the other way.
She's right, Bishop. If someone went through the trouble of shoving scripture down the good father's throat, they're not the type to leave loose ends. The moment we arrive, we'll be told it never happened.
Which means we have exactly 30 minutes to solve this before it's taken out of our hands. Who else was close to him?
Father Moreau was respected, but he wasn't without his troubles. He had been troubled lately, talking about truths that needed to be revealed. He kept journals, private reflections. He never let anyone see them.
Where are they now?
I don't know. They weren't in his luggage. If he had them, he kept them hidden.
Olivia's mind raced. If the killer was trying to silence Moreau, they wouldn't have left behind those journals. They were either destroyed, or worse, still in the possession of the murderer. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently under the Channel Tunnel. We will be arriving in Paris in approximately 26 minutes.
We need to search his cabin.
Laurent and Elms exchanged glances before the bishop finally nodded.
Let's go.
The three of them hurried out of the luggage car, leaving the silent priest behind. The killer was still out there, and if they weren't careful, someone else might not make it to Paris alive. Chapter 6, A Hidden Truth. The trio moved swiftly through the narrow corridors of the train, past rows of oblivious passengers immersed in their own worlds, reading, dozing, scrolling through their devices, unaware that a killer was among them. Father Moreau's cabin was near the center of the first-class section. Olivia could feel Bishop Laurent's tension growing with every step, while Elms remained eerily quiet, his sharp eyes scanning the passengers they passed. When they reached the priest's cabin, Laurent hesitated before sliding the door open. Inside, the space was neat but lifeless, a stark contrast to the brutal murder in the luggage car. Olivia's eyes swept over the small sleeping area, a closed leather suitcase, a stack of books, a cup of untouched tea still resting on the fold-out tray. And then she saw it, a worn leather-bound notebook, tucked beneath a neatly folded coat on the seat. She snatched it up, flipping through pages filled with hasty, desperate handwriting, lines of scripture, prayers, and something else. "The truth will be buried beneath the pages," she read aloud.
That's not scripture. That's a warning.
Before she could turn another page, the train lurched violently, knocking her into Elms. The notebook slipped from her grasp, hitting the floor just as the overhead lights flickered. A power surge. Unusual, but not unheard of. Olivia bent to retrieve the journal, but her fingers barely grazed the leather cover before a shadow loomed over her. She barely had time to react before a hand clamped over her wrist. A gloved hand, her instincts kicked in. She wrenched herself free, stumbling backward into Laurent. Elms cursed, lunging forward, but the attacker was already retreating, vanishing into the corridor before they could catch a glimpse of their face. The train swayed as Olivia scrambled for the notebook, flipping desperately through the pages. And then she saw it, a final unfinished entry. Written in Father Moreau's shaky handwriting, the ink smeared as if he had been interrupted. He knows. The pages remain, but so does he. He won't let it come to light. The killer wasn't just covering up a secret. They were still watching. Chapter 7, A Shocking Revelation. The train hurtled through the darkness, its rhythmic clatter the only sound, as Olivia, Elms, and Bishop Laurent stared at the final words in Father Moreau's journal. He knows. The pages remain, but so does he. He won't let it come to light. Olivia felt a chill crawl up her spine. Who was he?
Does this mean anything to you, Bishop? Because if you know something, now is the time to speak. I don't know. Moreau never told me exactly what he was working on. He only said it was dangerous.
So you had no idea he was about to blow the whistle on something? A secret someone was willing to kill him over?
Laurent hesitated just a fraction too long, and that's when she knew. It hit her like a bolt of lightning, the missing Bible pages that were stuffed into Moreau's mouth. The torn scrap of paper hidden in his robe, the missing documents he was trying to expose. Olivia turned to Laurent slowly, her mind racing.
You said Moreau had journals, plural. Where are the others?
Laurent's lips parted, but no sound came out.
He knows.
He jabbed a finger at Laurent.
Moreau was talking about you, wasn't he?
Laurent took a step back.
This is absurd.
No.
What's absurd is a priest being murdered in the most symbolic way possible, while the only other high-ranking church official on board conveniently knows nothing about it.
Laurent's breathing was shallow now, cornered. Moreau was afraid of you.
He thought you would try to stop him. Maybe not kill him, but stop him.
Laurent's hands trembled, but his face hardened.
I didn't kill him.
But you know why he died.
Snap.
For a moment there was silence. Then, the train's intercom crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be arriving at Gare du Nord in 15 minutes.
Moreau was planning to expose a document hidden within the Vatican archives. One that contradicts a fundamental doctrine of the Church. Let me guess, proof that the whole thing was built on a lie?
Laurent's jaw tightened.
It was a manuscript, a record of a meeting that took place centuries ago. A decision was made, a lie was told, and that lie shaped the entire foundation of modern Catholicism.
The weight of his words hung in the air.
And Moreau found this document, and he wasn't going to keep it secret.
A slow realization dawned on Olivia. If Moreau had discovered proof of a lie so big, so earth-shattering, then his murder wasn't just about silencing one man. It was about protecting a truth that could bring the entire church crashing down. Elms let out a low whistle.
Well, no wonder someone stuffed the word of God down his throat.
The train shuddered as it began slowing, its brakes whining as they neared their destination.
They were running out of time.
And the real killer was still out there. Watching, waiting. Chapter 8, A Dangerous Pursuit. The Eurostar lurched, signaling its final approach into Gare du Nord.
Olivia's pulse pounded against her ribs as she exchanged a glance with Elms. The truth was out. Moreau had been silenced for uncovering a Vatican secret, but the real killer was still on board. Watching. Waiting.
We need to turn this over to the authorities, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. The only way to get real justice is to expose this ourselves.
The train screeched as it began slowing to a stop. The final announcement rang out over the intercom. Welcome to Paris. Please ensure you have all personal belongings before disembarking. And that's when Olivia saw it. A man, sitting 3 rows ahead of them. Black gloves, a dark trench coat, calm but too still, watching them in the reflection of the window. Her stomach twisted. He had been listening the whole time, and as the train doors slid open, he stood. Then he ran.
Go.
Olivia hissed, shoving past Laurent as she lunged into the aisle.
Don't lose him.
The chase was on. The crowded platform at Gare du Nord erupted into motion as passengers spilled out of the train, some dragging luggage, others lost in conversation. The killer weaved through them like a shadow, his black coat billowing as he moved toward the main exit. Olivia's breath came fast as she shoved through the crowd, her eyes locked on the fleeing figure. The man turned his head just for a second. Their eyes met, and then he bolted toward the stairs leading to the station's underground corridors.
He's heading for the metro.
Elms shouted. Laurent hesitated, but Olivia grabbed his sleeve.
We don't have a choice. You're coming with us.
They burst down the stairs, nearly colliding with a group of startled commuters. The underground tunnels were a maze of dim lighting, stone walls, and flickering advertisements. The killer took a sharp left, leaping over a turnstile in one swift motion.
He knows this place.
It's cursed. Olivia wasn't about to let him disappear. She vaulted the barrier right after him, landing hard and nearly stumbling, but she kept going. The footsteps ahead of her echoed loudly as the killer sprinted toward the next platform, a train already waiting, its doors about to close.
No.
Olivia muttered, pushing harder. The killer dove between the closing doors, barely making it inside. Olivia lunged forward, slammed her hands against the doors, just as they locked shut. She stared into the train as it began moving. The killer stood inside, watching her, completely expressionless, and then, in a single, deliberate motion, he raised one hand and showed her what he was holding. Father Moreau's missing Bible pages. Then, the train vanished into the tunnel. Elms caught up, panting.
Tell me we got him.
No, but now we know who he is. Not for long.
Because now, it wasn't just about Father Moreau's murder. It was about what the killer took with him. And whatever was written on those missing Bible pages was something worth killing for. Chapter 9, uncovering the killer's identity. The platform at Gare du Nord was still alive with the bustle of travelers, oblivious to the fact that a killer had just slipped through their midst. Olivia stood frozen, watching the metro train disappear into the dark tunnel, taking with it the man who had murdered Father Moreau, and the missing Bible pages that might explain why. She exhaled sharply. No time for frustration, she needed answers. Now.
We need to figure out who he is before he disappears for good.
Elms swore under his breath, running a hand through his silver hair.
Right? Let's think. You saw him up close. Describe everything.
Olivia closed her eyes, rewinding the moment in her mind. Black gloves, no fingerprints, a professional, dark trench coat, blended into the crowd but moved like he knew what he was doing. His face pale, angular jaw, scar above his left eyebrow. He didn't panic. Even when he was cornered, he was calm, too calm.
That description.
Laurent's face tightened. Elms narrowed his eyes.
You recognize him?
Laurent hesitated. Olivia didn't have time for games. She grabbed his sleeve, voice sharp.
Bishop, if you know something, say it. Now.
I don't know his name, but I've seen him before.
Where?
Laurent hesitated, then murmured.
At the Vatican.
Silent.
Oh, fantastic. So the killer isn't just some rogue lunatic? He has connections to the highest power in the church?
Olivia wasn't surprised. She had suspected it from the start.
What was he doing there?
Laurent shifted uncomfortably.
He was always with Cardinal Sebastian Moretti.
That name sent a chill down Olivia's spine. Moretti, one of the most powerful men in the Vatican. Ruthless, ambitious, whispers of his influence reached deep into the church's inner workings.
So what, this guy's a bodyguard? More than that, he's Moretti's fixer.
Olivia's stomach dropped. Fixer. The kind of person whose job was to make problems disappear. And Father Moreau had been a problem.
So Moreau wasn't just uncovering some forgotten Vatican secret. He was stepping on some very powerful toes. If Moretti ordered this, we won't stop him through normal channels. You don't go after men like him without consequences.
Olivia clenched her fists. She had spent her whole life exposing corruption, fighting against the untouchable. Moretti wasn't a god. He could bleed.
I know someone who can get us a name. If we can figure out who this guy is, we can track him.
Who's your contact?
Olivia didn't answer. Instead, she dialed a number she hadn't used in years. A raspy voice picked up on the other end.
Carter, didn't think I'd hear from you again. I need a name, a Vatican enforcer, working under Moretti. Black gloves, trench coat, scar over the left eyebrow.
There was a pause, then a soft chuckle.
Ah, so you've crossed paths with the confessor.
A cold wave of dread rolled through Olivia. The confessor?
Who is he?
His real name is Matteo Ricci, ex-military, trained in wet work. If he's after you, Carter, you'd better start running.
Olivia's blood turned to ice. Moreau's killer had a name now. Matteo Ricci, a professional Vatican assassin. And he was still out there, watching, waiting. Chapter 10. A race to uncover the Bible pages. The moment Olivia heard the name Matteo Ricci, she knew the stakes had just skyrocketed. A Vatican assassin, a trained killer, and he still had Father Moreau's missing Bible pages. Her contact's words echoed in her head.
If he's after you, Carter, you'd better start running.
She ended the call and turned to Elms and Laurent.
We have a name, Matteo Ricci.
I've heard whispers. He's more than just a fixer. He's a Vatican shadow, a man who makes problems disappear without a trace. Great. We're chasing a guy who's probably killed more people than we've interviewed.
Olivia pushed down the fear clawing at her gut. There was no time for hesitation. Ricci had Moreau's missing pages, and if they didn't recover them before he vanished into the depths of Paris, they'd never see them again. She pulled up a map of Gare du Nord's metro system on her phone. The train Ricci had taken was bound for Châtelet Station, a major transit hub with countless exits.
He's switching locations, he's trained, he wouldn't stay in one place. We have minutes to find him before he disappears.
Then we need to move now.
The chase through Paris. Olivia, Elms, and Laurent raced through the bustling terminal, dodging travelers and luggage carts as they descended into the metro tunnels. The platform was packed, the air thick with the scent of oil and metal. Olivia's heart pounded as she scanned the crowd, searching for a familiar dark trench coat and scarred face. Then movement. At the far end of the platform, Ricci stepped onto the next train, his posture casual, as if he hadn't just murdered a priest and fled the Eurostar. The doors began to close. Olivia sprinted forward, slamming her hand against the metal just in time. The doors bounced open, and she lunged inside, Elms right behind her. Laurent, slower than the rest, barely made it in before the train pulled away from the station. The carriage was eerily quiet, passengers lost in their phones or staring blankly ahead. But Olivia only had eyes for Richie, who stood near the far exit, his back partially turned toward them. He knew they were here. And he wasn't running anymore. The standoff. Olivia stepped forward slowly, gripping the metal pole to steady herself as the train swayed.
Matteo Ricci, her voice low.
The assassin turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the scar above his left eyebrow. He didn't look surprised. If anything, he looked amused. "You've been chasing me. A mistake."
Where are the pages?
Elms took a threatening step forward. "Ah, the famous missing Bible pages. I must admit, I admire your persistence." He reached into his coat. Elms tensed, ready to strike. But instead of a gun, Richie pulled out a worn, yellowed bundle of paper. The missing pages from Father Moreau's Bible. He dangled them in his gloved fingers, smirking. "Is this what you want?" Olivia's breath hitched. They were so close.
What's on them? What was so dangerous that Moreau had to die?
Richie studied her, as if deciding whether she was even worth an answer. Then, slowly, he spoke. The pages contain a record, a confession, written centuries ago. A meeting between high-ranking church officials where a decision was made.
What decision?
Laurent's face paled. To fabricate the greatest lie in history. The train lurched, approaching its next stop. Richie glanced at the doors, his exit, and in a flash, he ripped the Bible pages in half.
No.
Olivia lunged, but it was too late. He stuffed the torn halves into his coat pockets and bolted as the doors slid open. Elms swore loudly and took off after him. Olivia was right behind, racing onto the platform as Richie pushed through the crowd. He was trying to lose them in the labyrinth of Châtelet's underground passages.
"We can't lose him."
Laurent wheezed as he stumbled out onto the platform. But Olivia already knew the truth. This wasn't just about chasing Richie anymore. It was about what he'd just said, a fabricated lie, the greatest lie in history. And they were about to uncover exactly what it was. Chapter 11, An Unexpected Betrayal. The labyrinthine corridors of Châtelet Station swallowed them whole as they raced after Richie, dodging past commuters, luggage, and flashing advertisements. The assassin was fast, too fast. Olivia's breath burned in her lungs, but she pushed forward, Elms close beside her. Richie's trench coat flared as he turned a corner sharply, disappearing down a narrow passageway leading to an emergency exit staircase.
"We've got him!"
Elms growled, surging ahead. Olivia followed, Laurent lagging behind, struggling to keep up. As they burst into the stairwell, Richie was waiting. He slammed the metal door shut, locking them in.
Damn it!
Olivia ran forward, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Richie had trapped them inside the stairwell and vanished into the night.
"Son of a, he played us."
Elms kicked the door in frustration. Olivia clenched her fists, furious, but something nagged at her. Richie could have killed them. Instead, he had run.
Something's wrong, Elms.
Yeah, no kidding. We just lost our only lead.
I'm saying,
Olivia said slowly, stepping toward Laurent,
that Matteo Ricci knew exactly what we were going to do before we did it, and the only person who could have told him...
She took another step forward, staring directly at Laurent.
Is you.
The bishop's silence was deafening.
I don't think I know.
She turned on Laurent.
You recognized Richie before anyone else. You knew Moreau's secret was dangerous, but you didn't tell us everything, and you conveniently hesitated every time we got too close.
Laurent said nothing. Olivia's stomach twisted. She wanted to be wrong.
Tell me I'm wrong, she whispered.
Laurent exhaled slowly. Then, for the first time, he smiled. It was a small, sad smile, and Olivia knew she had been right all along.
"I didn't want Moreau to die, but he left me no choice."
Elms stepped back, his face pale.
You were in on this?"
Laurent's gaze was unreadable.
"I was trying to protect the church."
The church, Olivia hissed, rage burning through her veins. Or yourself.
Laurent's fingers tightened around the silver cross at his chest.
"The world is built on faith, Miss Carter, and faith cannot survive the truth Moreau was going to reveal."
You mean to tell me Moreau was murdered because he wanted people to know the truth?
Laurent nodded once. Olivia felt sick.
And you helped cover it up.
"You don't understand, Olivia. If this truth got out, the church, everything billions of people believe in, would crumble. There would be chaos."
That's not your decision to make.
Olivia.
"Isn't it?"
Laurent tilted his head. Then, a metallic click. Laurent pulled a gun from his robes.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Cursed. The bishop aimed the weapon squarely at Olivia.
I truly am sorry, but I can't let you leave here alive.
Olivia's heart pounded. She had faced death before, but this time there was no escape. Laurent's finger tightened on the trigger. And then a gunshot rang out. Laurent staggered. His eyes widened in shock. He collapsed. Elms stood behind him, a smoking gun in his hands.
Elms?
She blinked.
He was going to kill you.
Laurent's breathing hitched, blood spreading across his chest. He reached for Olivia, his fingers twitching, and then he was still. A heavy silence filled the stairwell.
Jesus Christ.
Elms exhaled shakily. Olivia stared down at the fallen bishop, the man who had tried to silence Moreau, the man who had protected the greatest lie in history.
This isn't over.
She looked at Elms, her mind spinning.
No, but it's a start.
Elms wiped his mouth. The sound of sirens filled the distance. And Olivia knew this story was far from finished. But now she had a new enemy. The Vatican knew she was coming, and Matteo Ricci was still out there, waiting, watching, ready to kill again. Chapter 12. The bait for Ricci. The cold night air clung to Olivia's skin as she and Elms stepped out of Châtelet station, leaving behind Bishop Laurent's body and the chaos unfolding in the stairwell. The police would arrive soon. They would have questions, but none of it mattered. Matteo Ricci was still out there. And if they wanted the missing Bible pages, they had to bring him to them.
We just killed a bishop.
Elms rubbed a hand over his face.
He was already dead the moment he chose to protect the lie.
So what's next? We lost Ricci, we lost the pages.
Ricci thinks he won. That means he'll let his guard down.
Olivia's mind was racing. She pulled out her phone, tapping into the anonymous journalist networks she still had access to. If Ricci was trained in counter-surveillance, they couldn't chase him. But they could make him come to them.
We need to leak a story, something Ricci won't be able to ignore.
Like what? Vatican assassin murders priest on Eurostar?
No, that would just push them into damage control.
Her fingers flew over her phone screen as she composed a single, cryptic message. Breaking. Missing Vatican documents resurface. Sources confirm contents to be explosive. Stay tuned. She hit send.
You're bluffing.
Elm's eyes widened.
That's what Ricci's gonna think, but he can't afford to ignore it.
You're making him come after us.
Exactly. He doesn't know we don't have the pages. But if he thinks we do, he'll come looking.
Damn, Carter, that's playing with fire.
That's the only way to burn a man like Ricci.
The trap is set. They needed a location. Somewhere public enough that Ricci couldn't kill them without making a scene, but isolated enough that they could confront him. Elms pulled up a map of Paris.
We need somewhere neutral, but somewhere Ricci would feel confident stepping into.
Olivia's eyes landed on a familiar name.
Notre Dame Cathedral.
You want to lure a Vatican assassin to a damn cathedral?
It's the perfect irony. The site of 1,000 prayers and 1,000 sins.
All right, but how do we make sure Ricci shows up?
We just did. That leak? Within an hour, it'll reach every Vatican contact Ricci has. And when they start panicking, he'll come.
And when he does?
We end this.
The waiting game. Hours passed. The city pulsed around them, tourists milling about in the square outside Notre Dame, unaware that a killer was coming. Olivia checked her phone. No response.
What if he doesn't take the bait?
He will.
And then a message flashed on her phone. No number, no name. Just 3 words. I'm watching you. Olivia's breath hitched. She lifted her gaze to the crowd. Somewhere, Ricci was here. Her heart pounded. The game had begun. Chapter 13, a shocking twist. The message on Olivia's phone sent a cold shiver down her spine. I'm watching you. Her fingers tightened around the device as she scanned the crowd outside Notre Dame, looking for any sign of Matteo Ricci. He was here. Somewhere.
Did he take the bait?
Oh, he took it, and now he's playing with us.
Then we need to move, now.
But before they could react, a sharp voice cut through the noise of the crowd. Miss Carter. Olivia froze. The voice was calm, familiar. She turned slowly, and her blood ran cold. Standing just a few feet away was Bishop Laurent, alive unharmed, and smiling. The dead don't stay dead.
No way, that's impossible.
Elms swore under his breath. Olivia's heart pounded. She knew what she had seen. Laurent had bled out in the stairwell. She had watched him die. And yet here he was. You look as though you've seen a ghost. Laurent took a step forward, his hands raised in mock surrender.
This isn't possible.
Olivia's fingers itched for her weapon. And yet he gestured at himself. Here I stand. Elm's voice was low, shaken.
We put a bullet in your chest.
Did you? Laurent tilted his head. Then he unbuttoned his jacket and pulled his shirt open. Olivia stared in disbelief, because there was no wound, no blood, no scar, nothing. As if the shooting had never happened. Elms took a step back, his face pale.
What the hell is this?
A second chance, perhaps, or maybe. He leaned in slightly, his eyes gleaming. You never really killed me. The truth unraveled. The world seemed to tilt under Olivia's feet.
You shot him, I saw it.
She looked at Elms.
I don't understand. I didn't miss.
You both were so quick to believe what you saw. But belief, he smirked, is a fragile thing, isn't it? The words hit Olivia like a freight train. Belief, the very thing Moreau had been trying to expose. The lie that had shaped history. Her mind spun. Was this another cover-up? A Vatican trick? A body double? You still don't get it, do you? Laurent sighed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The pages were never about what the church covered up.
What?
Olivia's breath hitched. The pages were about what the church created. Laurent's smile widened.
What are you saying?
A chill ran down her spine. I'm saying, Miss Carter, that some things are more than just history. Some things are rewritten. And then he leaned in and whispered, even reality, the impossible becomes real. A cold dread clawed at Olivia's chest. This wasn't just about a buried Vatican secret. This wasn't just about a murdered priest. This was bigger, much bigger.
No, that's insane.
Elms shook his head. Is it? You saw me die, you watched me bleed out, and yet, here I stand, and I assure you, gentlemen. His eyes locked onto Olivia's. I am as real as you. Olivia's pulse roared in her ears. Moreau had died to protect the truth. Richie had killed for it. And now, Laurent had returned from the dead.
Olivia, if he's alive, then what does that mean?
Because deep down she already knew.
Olivia's hands trembled. The Bible pages weren't hiding a secret. They were hiding a power that had just been used. And now, they weren't just running from Matteo Ricci. They were running from something much worse. The power to rewrite history itself. Chapter 14. Unlocking the Truth. Olivia's mind raced, her pulse pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Laurent was alive. That was impossible, absolutely impossible. And yet he stood before them, calm, composed, and very much real. This wasn't just a cover-up. This wasn't just a hidden Vatican scandal. This was something more.
I saw you die.
Elms was still staring at Laurent, his hands clenched into fists. You saw what you were meant to see. Laurent sighed. What you were meant to see. A fabricated truth, a rewritten reality.
What's in the pages, Bishop?
Her hands trembled as she turned back to Laurent. You already know.
No, I want to hear you say it.
Very well. Laurent exhaled. He took a slow step forward, his voice lowering to barely a whisper. The Bible pages contain the record of the first alteration. The words sent a chill through Olivia's bones. The first alteration. She had expected some kind of confession, some buried historical manipulation, some lie the Vatican had kept hidden for centuries. But this was something else entirely. You're beginning to understand, aren't you? Laurent watched her carefully.
Alteration, you don't mean...
I do. Laurent cut her off. The original Bible was not simply edited, Olivia. It was altered, rewritten, physically, irreversibly, changed.
Insane.
Elms staggered back, his face pale. Is it? You believe in ink on a page, in the way a story can shift history. But what if it wasn't just history that changed?
What are you saying?
Olivia's voice shook. Laurent's lips curved into a knowing smile. I'm saying that the world you live in, the reality you know, is not the first version of reality. A stunned silence hung between them.
This is crazy.
Elms let out a breathless laugh. The pages Moreau found, they contain the record of the first time it was done. The first time an event in history was rewritten. Olivia took a step back, her legs weak beneath her. If this was true, if this was real, then Father Moreau hadn't just uncovered a lie. He had uncovered evidence that reality itself had been manipulated. The truth hidden in the pages. You think I'm lying. That's good. That means your mind is still rational. But you need to let that go. Laurent watched her reaction closely. He pulled something from his coat pocket. A single crumpled Bible page. Not one of the ones Richie had stolen, but one Moreau had hidden. Read it. Laurent held it out to her. Olivia hesitated, then took the page with shaking fingers. The text looked normal at first glance, scripture in faded ink, delicate Latin lettering, but as she looked closer, her breath caught in her throat. There were two overlapping lines of text, one passage written over another, as if something had been erased and rewritten.
What is this?
She traced the ink with her thumb, heart hammering. That, Miss Carter, is a passage that no longer exists. Laurent's voice was soft, almost reverent. A passage that once shaped the world, and then one day, it was replaced.
Replaced? You mean?
Yes, not erased, not hidden. Reality was rewritten to accommodate the change.
That's impossible.
And yet you saw me die, and here I stand. Olivia's pulse pounded. The implications were terrifying. If reality itself could be altered, if someone, somewhere, had the ability to rewrite history, not just in words but in truth, then what else had been changed? And who was controlling it? The final realization. Olivia's mind raced through the possibilities. The Vatican had hidden this for centuries. Moreau had discovered the truth, and Ritchie had killed him to keep it buried. And now Ritchie had the rest of the pages.
We need to find Ritchie.
Olivia whispered.
Are you insane? He just tried to kill us.
He has the rest of the pages, and if what Laurent is saying is true, those pages are the only proof we have that reality has been tampered with.
You're beginning to see the bigger picture.
It's not just about exposing this anymore. If someone has the ability to rewrite reality, we need to know who's pulling the strings.
You're saying this isn't just about the church?
No, this is bigger, way bigger.
Laurent's smile didn't waver. I was hoping you'd say that. Olivia's stomach twisted, because suddenly, she wasn't sure who Laurent was really working for, or if he had been telling the truth at all. Chapter 15, Hunting Ritchie. The moment the weight of the truth settled in Olivia's mind, she knew what had to happen next. They had to find Matteo Ritchie. Laurent had confirmed what she had feared. The missing Bible pages contained proof that reality itself had been rewritten, that the world they lived in was not the first version of history. And Ritchie had those pages.
We need to move now.
She turned to Elms, her voice sharp and controlled.
And go where? Ritchie is a professional killer, Olivia. He's not just going to waltz into the open.
Where would he go?
Olivia locked eyes with Laurent. If I were him, I'd return to the only place that guarantees me protection.
The Vatican?
No, Ritchie is a man of precision. He doesn't run unless he has to. Olivia's pulse quickened.
Then he's still here, in Paris.
And if he hasn't fled by now, it means he's preparing for something.
He's planning to disappear.
She clenched her fists, and once he did, the truth would vanish with him. A trail of shadows, Laurent led them through the winding back streets of Paris, away from the tourists, away from the places where the authorities would search.
I don't trust him.
Neither do I, but right now he was their only lead.
Laurent finally stopped at a small, dimly lit bookshop tucked between two larger buildings. Its faded sign read, Librairie du Passé. A bookstore?
You really think an assassin is hiding in a shop?
You'd be surprised how much history gets buried between pages. They stepped inside, the scent of aged parchment and dust filling the air. The shop was mostly empty, save for a thin, elderly man behind the counter who barely looked up. Laurent walked straight to a hidden door in the back, knocking twice in a rhythmic pattern. A moment later, the door unlocked. Olivia's pulse spiked. Behind it was a narrow, candle-lit corridor leading into the depths of the building.
If this is a trap...
You're paranoid.
We're just still alive.
Olivia muttered. She led the way inside. Ritchie's hideout. The corridor opened into a small room, lined with old manuscripts and stacks of papers. At the center of it all, Matteo Ritchie, seated at an old wooden table, legs crossed, a gun resting casually in his lap. And in front of him, the missing Bible pages. Olivia's breath hitched. Took you long enough. Ritchie smirked. Elms moved first, drawing his gun, but Ritchie didn't even flinch. You fire that, and you'll never know what these pages say. He tapped the fragile documents in front of him.
You read them, didn't you?
Oh, I did more than that. Ritchie leaned forward, his expression unreadable. I understand now why Moreau had to die. Then you know how dangerous this is. Laurent exhaled. Oh, I do. Ritchie's eyes flickered to him. And I know exactly what's about to happen.
What do you mean?
Her stomach twisted. They already know you're here. Ritchie smirked. A gunshot shattered the silence. The front of the bookstore exploded in chaos. They were no longer alone. The final choice. The door behind them burst open, and figures in black tactical gear stormed in. Run. Ritchie moved fast, grabbing the pages, shoving them into Olivia's hands.
What are you?
She blinked in shock. Run. Ritchie's eyes darkened. Then, he spun toward the attackers, firing first. The room erupted in gunfire. Elms grabbed Olivia's arm.
We have to go now.
She clutched the pages, her heart hammering. Richie was buying them time. But the truth was now in her hands. And if she didn't escape, it would be lost forever. Chapter 16, Richie's final words. The bookstore erupted in chaos. Gunfire tore through the narrow room, shattering ancient manuscripts and sending splinters flying through the air. The attackers in black tactical gear advanced with deadly precision, their weapons trained on Richie. He moved like a ghost, firing back, but Olivia knew the truth. He was outnumbered. And he knew it too. "Go!" Richie barked, shoving Olivia toward the side exit. The Bible pages were still clutched in her hands.
We can't save him.
Elms grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the door. But Olivia hesitated. Richie was their last link to understanding the truth, the only man who had read the pages before her. And yet, he wasn't running. He was staying behind. "If you don't leave now, you'll die too." Laurent was already at the exit, urging them forward. And that was when it happened. A bullet found its mark. Richie's body jerked violently as the shot slammed into his chest. Olivia's breath caught. No, but Richie didn't fall immediately. Instead, he turned his head toward her, his expression eerily calm. His dark eyes locked onto hers. And then, with his final breath, he whispered, "You were never meant to remember." Then he dropped. The light in his eyes flickered out. And Matteo Ricci, the Vatican's deadliest assassin, the keeper of secrets, was gone. Escape into the unknown. Elms dragged Olivia through the exit, the sounds of gunfire still roaring behind them. They burst into the narrow alley, the cold Paris air hitting them like a slap. "We need to disappear, now." Laurent slammed the door shut behind them, his face pale. Olivia barely heard him. Richie's final words echoed in her skull. "You were never meant to remember." What did he mean? She clutched the Bible pages, her hands trembling. Moreau had died for these. Richie had killed for them. And now Richie was dead too. But his words, they terrified her more than anything else. Because if the first version of reality had been altered, then what else had been changed? And more importantly, had Olivia Carter herself been rewritten? To be continued.